was wondering to myself when they were going to reveal that Grogu was a Palpatine. The Great Wall of Disney is starting to show its cracks. The impenetrable barrier surrounding the decision makers, their IPs, its writers, executives, and activists alike are living in great fear as the consumer bombardment rages on, getting increasingly aggressive with every new project announced. As Disney barrels down the inevitable self-inflicted path of alienating their fans, twisting, turning, and controlling beloved characters, series, films, and franchises into meaningless message-spreading political activism outlets for the sole purpose of trying to control the masses, their culture, their daily life, their desires, and the very way they process a thought. Well, we've got news for you, Disney. There's a chink in your defense. I can confidently confirm another disease you've contracted due to your incessant rolling in recycled shit and lack of fresh originality. It's a franchise-killing cancer, and it's called The Mandalorian Season 3, written by Jon Favreau, micromanaged by Kathleen Kennedy. Pamper your palates, my purple people eaters, cause this one's gonna be bittersweet. Now, as of late, many of my fellow consumers on my channel have been pressuring me into watching The Mandalorian Season 3, claiming it's so great, it's so cool, and they're still doing great things over there. Now, whether you believe me or not, it doesn't bother me, because I know I tried so hard going into this with an open mind, so that I may judge it myself as a true Star Wars fan, and give you the most unbiased, raw opinion on it. So, naturally, I did what had to be done. I paid a homeless man to put me in a straitjacket, super glue my eyelids open, and pin me to a chair so I can focus and enjoy on the part of Star Wars that's still supposed to be great. Is this the way? I thought. Let's find out, my fellow consumers. Now, this might be a fairly long rant since, well, it's the entire season of bantha fodder I have to cover here, as opposed to my normal unrestrained, rather opinionated, but very neutral and completely not biased rants on Hollywood modern cinema, its writers, decision makers, and other cultural controlling entertainment media sources. No, this is a deep dive rant on a fabled series that once humbly carried an entire 45-year-old beloved franchise on its back, single-handedly. This is Disney's Kathleen Kennedy's Jon Favreau's The Mandalorian Season 3, fuckos. Let's hit the positives first, because frankly there's not a whole lot of that, but there are some in here. And I'd rather not jump right into Star Wars ripping in a new dickhole. Best scene in the entire show, hands down, is when Grogu piloted the IG-12 unit for the first time.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. I like how Din Djarin took on a much bigger father figure role in this season, and the writers really dove in and explored how strong the father-son bond between him and Grogu can be, and between different races in general. I think the two best things about this season are the appearances of Tim Meadows as Colonel Tuttle and Jedi Master Jar Jar Binks. Tim Meadows is a seasoned character actor, and I always enjoy seeing him in quirky roles like this where he shines his brightest as some offbeat character that just completely steals the show. As far as Jedi Master Jar Jar Binks, and if you don't know who I'm talking about, I'm referring to the actor that once did the voice and motion capture for Jar Jar Binks, Ahmed Best, who was actually one of the core actors of the Star Wars franchise that got the short end of the stick. It was pretty cool to see him returning to the series, but this time as Jedi Master Kelleran Beck saving Grogu during the attack in the Jedi Temple in the flashback. Now, allow me to take you for a quick ride down the rabbit hole of nitpicking confusion and just indulge me for 1 second, my fellow consumer. If we are to assume all of this is canon, which not even the great Emperor Kathleen Kennedy herself would argue against that assumption, because unfortunately, all this is canon, but I digress. The last time we saw Jedi Master Kelleran Beck, he was sitting in a bar in the Outlander Club on planet Coruscant in Episode 2 Attack of the Clones, and judging by the individuals he was surrounding himself with at the time, the clothes he was wearing, and the dicey environment we found him in, it's safe to assume he was not a Jedi at that point. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but Jedis undergo training at a very young age, but clearly this man became a Jedi later in life as an adult, and even after making some dicey decisions in his life. Now correct me if I'm wrong again, but the only other individual to ever undergo Jedi training as an adult was Revan. Are you telling me this Jedi, Kelleran Beck, is so powerful that he is one of only 2 people to ever be inducted into the Jedi Academy as an adult? Yes, forgetful and careless modern Star Wars fans, that's exactly what I'm telling you. Well then, if that's really the case, I would much rather see a series about the second most interesting Jedi to ever live, Jedi Master Kelleran Beck, aka random dude sitting at the bar in the Outlander Club on Coruscant. Even more coincidentally enough, when he was fleeing with Grogu, he was running the same exact route Anakin ran when he was chasing the assassin that went after Padme in Episode 2. Look, I understand what paying homage is to something, but this is just plain lack of originality. My hat's off to Ahmed Best in this role. He was so comfortable in that Jedi robe and he wore it so well. You can really tell he's been waiting for an opportunity to wield a lightsaber and wear the robe, and I'd really like to see more of him. Or I could be completely wrong and overthinking this entire thing in a different direction. Maybe Jon Favreau planned for this and he's so smart that he inserted Ahmed Best in there to set it up for a larger storyline because his character was undercover at the Jedi Outlander Club in the Attack of the Clones. Although why wouldn't he helped and why wouldn't they kill him in the Jedi War then? Was he that undercover? Is he a double agent? No, they're not that smart. Also, I'm not sure if it's a good or bad thing, but comparing Season 1 Mandalorian to Season 3 Mandalorian, he's much more talkative this season, borderline annoying. He completely lost the mystique that he had the first 2 seasons that kept us coming back for more. And while I like how this season dove more into depth with the culture and the way of life of the Mandalorians, it still felt a little bit hesitant to go any deeper, which made it still feel a little more like a generic surface level than a deep dive. I also like how the dangers never really posed a big enough threat in the series for Mando or a planet for the Jedi to get involved and save the day. Because if there was a big enough threat, scrutinizers like myself would think, hey, that's a big enough threat for a Jedi to get involved, like Luke, who's alive right now. Or ask questions like, why doesn't a Jedi just come save the day? Or why haven't we heard of this historical event in the Star Wars timeline? It was always a threat just big enough for him and Grogu to believably handle, and I can respect that. And maybe gotten a little bit rocky towards the end in the last episode against those red guards, but we don't really need to talk about that. We're still on positives here. It was cool to see Grogu have his moments and save the Mandalorian and other people, but at the same time his force powers felt just a little inconsistent, and I'll touch on that more later. His heroic scenes kind of made me feel like the same way I felt in Ratchet and Clank when you have to play as Clank to save Ratchet in some parts. The threats felt conveniently weaker, just enough for Clank and Grogu to be able to overcome. I also want to address Din Djarin's poor aiming in the beginning of the show. I don't know if that was on purpose, but somehow his aiming with a blaster got worse since the last 2 seasons in the beginning of the show. I guess he just hasn't had the target practice. I don't know if that was intentional or not. I also don't know if it's because the only thing he's been doing the last year is swinging around that new laser dick he stole from the legendary laser dick swordsman himself, Moff Gideon. If I suddenly went from being a gunslinger to a laser dick swordsman, I wouldn't even look at my gun ever again. So no judgment there, Mando. Speaking of dicks, boy, Moff Gideon really took a back seat after losing that darksaber last season, huh? I guess he took that circumcision a lot harder than we thought. And it's weird because when he finally does show his face for longer than 12 seconds in this season towards the end, but he had a very blithely attitude about it, and it was just strange. He would just smile a lot more when he was talking about his plans. It was rather odd and a new addition to his character. He never used to smile nearly that much, even when he was in possession of the darksaber. Oh well, I guess he got soft in his circumcision. Kinda convenient how there's an abrupt shift in all of Din Djarin's priorities because all the focus turns to Moff Gideon once the plot wants to focus on him. Alright, I guess we're moving into the negative now because now I'm beginning my nitpicking, and it was just a little convenient that every time Din Djarin and Bo-Katan were together that he would become more and more prone to danger and completely help us in these situations, allowing for just the perfect opportunity for Bo-Katan to swoop in and help him. It was almost as if the writers were trying to tell us how much better, stronger, smarter, and more experienced at fighting the great leader Bo-Katan is than her male counterpart. Those kind of inserts just don't bring any more value to the show or story in any way. It's just there just to be in there and send a message, and maybe act as a filler to appease a very anal micromanaging executive who may or may not be related to former late President John F. As a writer, I can tell you for a fact, there are many more creative ways to display a strong female character. Now, I don't know about you, but I really don't like how stupid they think we are as consumers. Not that this is a huge deal or anything, but when Bo-Katan was given the privilege to walk both worlds, remove her helmet, and still be considered a Mandalorian, I just couldn't help but think of Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn when they anointed her a Seeker and let her just travel the open world. To me, as a gamer, it just felt a little too close to home and unoriginal in that sense. Although I do love Christopher Lloyd and Jack Black, and even Lizzo's not so bad, but I'm not going to talk anymore about episode 6, the filler episode. I gave it a total of 18 minutes, and I just moved on to the next. Pretty convenient how we didn't see any vibro swords until episode 7 when those two Mandalorians that supposedly hate each other got their panties in a twist over a chess game that they were playing together. I just found it a little strange out of all the confrontations faced this season, a chess game was the one big enough to trigger Mandalorians to pull out their vibro swords. Does that make sense anywhere? I don't know if you remember, but it was made abundantly clear that upon first seeing each other, those two Mandalorians had it out for one another. And out of all the Mandalorians on that ship, why would they choose to play chess together, let alone anyone allow them to play chess together? Yeah, obviously that's gonna end in an altercation, you fucking dumb Mandalorians. Or you dumb writers. Sorry, John. Pretty much just there to fill a space, not very creative way to build on your story for your characters, folks. The Mandalorians can't use the Force, but that scene was forced as hell. It seems like it was just there to add action to the show. Just really a space to fill and not a very creative one, or a way to build onto your stories with your characters. Oh boy, this is not going well, my fellow consumers. Man, this season's trying really hard to be funny. Season 1 and 2 felt a lot more organic, allowing for natural comedic moments to arise and play out cohesively. The story just feels like they were trying to hit a quota of laughs and failed miserably. Hey, let's just be grateful that Grogu wasn't a Palpatine, because to me that's somewhat of a win. I just know somebody was in that writer room suggesting that Grogu should be a Palpatine. I just fucking know it. And whoever shut that idea down, thank you. As the most viewed and leading series of all Star Wars TV shows that Disney put out, The Mandalorian was supposed to represent how strong the Star Wars franchise is still going. Yet, all it really does is show how weak and mundane they've become. All too often were illogical plot conveniences, like for example Bo-Katan herself going down to the launch pad to personally kick Mandalorian off the planet when it just so happened to be Grogu alone seeking her help to rescue Din Djarin. These type of plot conveniences are riddled throughout the series, making for a less believable story structure. The inconsistency in which Grogu's force powers are really tickles my pickle. Not in a good way though. Grogu is only ever as powerful as Kathleen Kennedy wants him to be, and when she wants him to be. The special effects in season 3 were somehow worse than they were in previous seasons as well, which doesn't make much sense seeing as how technology progresses in the forward direction, like time. The CGI for the giant crocodile in the opening scene of episode 1 during the Mandalorian ritual was on the same visual level as something out of Peter Jackson's King Kong from 2005, which was pretty good for its time, 18 years ago. And Grogu somehow got uglier. I don't know if they changed puppets or that motherfucker's just getting older, but he is fugly. I know it's their go-to phrase, but "this is the way" is said way too often in this season. And not only that, but it also makes the phrase sound a bit redundant, like when you repeat a word over and over and over again. A buddy of mine told me that it's the Mandalorian's version of "may the force be with you." But I have to be honest with you, they didn't even say "may the force be with you" that many times in all 6 Star Wars films combined. That phrase isn't even said as many times as "this is the way" is said in episode 1 of season 3 alone. It's just complete overkill. As of right now, the year 2023, the newly made canonical Cal Kestis is the most interesting thing about Star Wars, and he's not even developed by Disney. Now, I don't know about you, but that speaks mega volumes to me. And mark my words, my fellow consumers, as soon as Disney runs out of other ideas, they'll put their grubby hands on Cal Kestis and twist, turn, and contort his story into something completely different than it is right now and how it's been represented in the game thus far. I'm sure we can all take a wild, educated guess on which direction it'll be pushed in and what message it'll try to send. The Mandalorian warriors in this season had a little bit of a Stormtrooper goofy vibe to them, except for that big-ass Mandalorian, because damn, that guy can put up a fight. That dude went up against a small army and took on 3 Red Royal Guards wielding electro staffs. What a shame the most badass moments of the show were only the last 50 minutes of the entire season 3. Yeah, towards the end, I'm not sure how to feel about their attempt to create that connection between Grogu and Din Djarin, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon in The Phantom Menace with that red barrier scene. It was kind of awkward and it felt like a last-minute addition, and while I see what they were trying to go for here, they probably could have had a much bigger payoff with a little bit more setup to that scene. Here, it just kind of felt like it was there just to be there so you can say, hey, remember that scene in episode 1? Yeah, this looks like that. Thoughtless fan service bullshit like this is what pushed the real Star Wars fans away, and why you get so much scrutiny now. It looks like they're still giving us the same old thoughtless fan service bullshit recycled. Speaking of bullshit, did I hear that correctly? Moff Gideon said he was creating force-sensitive clones? Yeah, good thing they killed his ass. Please don't make that a thing in Star Wars. People with force powers are supposed to be sacred. Do not diminish them by making it so easy to create clones with force-sensitive abilities. Please, I'm begging you on behalf of everyone. The little care that I have for the Star Wars franchise, please don't do this. At the very end, when Moff Gideon was fighting Bo-Katan, he knocked her back and said, hand over the Darksaber. After all this and losing it, did he really forget that it can't just be given to him? That shit's gotta be won in battle, idiot. And then almost in the same breath, he destroys the Darksaber. Now that wasn't meant to be funny, but that shit was fucking hilarious. Like, what the fuck kind of nonsense writing is that? I recently read that Mark Hamill admitted in an interview that Disney doesn't actually care about quality. Now, given the situation of things, I would say that statement holds very true. I really think this season could have easily been reduced to 5 episodes. Episodes 1 through 3 and 7 and 8 were the only story episodes. While The Mandalorian season 3 wasn't as bad as I had predicted it to be, it was still at best a subpar season compared to its predecessors. And well, if the viewing numbers are anything to go by, their best performing IP isn't nearly what it once was to the fans. So, what else you really got, Disney? As the Great Wall of Disney begins to crumble at their feet, there will soon be more wiggle room for quality cinematic productions to begin their ascent in the industry, delivering the smart dialogue, complex three-dimensional characters, and deep-rooted lore of fantasy cinema we all love and deserve so much. I think if there's anything we can take away from this experience that Disney taught us, it takes more money to fuck up a franchise than it takes to actually build one up. I guess it's a good thing for Disney that they have more money than God. And given the lineup of future projects that are set to release under the Star Wars umbrella, I'd say Kathleen has her hands quite full with the upcoming Mandalorian Season 4 and the Thrawn film. Cause well, you know she's gonna be there the entire time, micromanaging, digging her nails deep into the franchise creatively just so she can get her message spread. There was a time when The Mandalorian reinvigorated my hope in the Star Wars series, post episode 7 through 9, but now it's only solidified my thoughts and feelings toward its current state. I really wish I could say to Disney what The Mandalorian say in lieu of confidence, but unfortunately I can't. Which instead, in regards to this bland, wasted Disney Plus series, I must say, my fellow consumers, this is not the way. Alright, well the video's over. So, until next time, I guess. Bye for now.